Paris had a way of weaving mystery into even the most ordinary afternoons. Clara Duval, with her sharp heels clicking against the cobblestones of Le Marais, embodied the city's elegance. She was a fashion journalist for latelier Vogue, her days filled with runway critiques and her evenings with gallery launches, champagne glasses, and the measured solitude of a woman who had seen enough false love to distrust the real thing. That afternoon she wore a cream silk blouse tucked into tailored high-waist trousers the shade of midnight. A camel trench fell elegantly from her shoulders, her auburn bob sleek as a lacquered ribbon. Gold hoops caught the pale Parisian light and flashed like small suns each time she turned her head, armor made of radiance. Her best friend Camille, a stylist whose phone never slept, tugged Clara toward a tiny tarot shop nestled between a perfumery and an antique bookseller. "It will be fun," Camille said, sweeping aside a velvet curtain. 10 minutes, I promise." The shop smelled of sandalwood and orange peel. Candles trembled in brass cups. At a small table draped in indigo cloth, a silver-haired reader lifted her gaze, kind but keen, as though she could see beneath silk and mascara to the quiet terrain of a guarded heart. "Sit," the woman said softly. "This is Camille's idea, not mine," Clara replied, yet she slipped into the chair as if the room had rearranged itself to receive her. The cards unfurled beneath careful fingers. The tower, its lightning striking stone, the moon, all secrets and tides, and then the third, the lovers. The image glowed almost imperceptibly in the candlelight, two figures not trapped by fate but chosen by it. "Your soulmate is close," the reader murmured. "You'll know him by the way the world bends when you meet his gaze." Clara's laugh caught in her throat. "And if I don't want a soulmate? Then fate will chase you harder," the woman said, smiling in a way that felt like a door half open. When they stepped back into the afternoon, Camille buzzed with delight. "Did you see your face? Admit it, you felt something." "Parlor tricks," Clara said, tying her trench with clinical precision. But the image of the lovers pressed against her ribcage like a secret. As she walked the narrow street, the city seemed to lean closer, listening. That night, Clara laid the shop's calling card on her dresser. A fine dusting of gold leaf edged the paper, catching the lamp glow. She told herself it was nothing. Still, when she switched off the light, she could have sworn the card gleamed once more, then darkened as if it too had chosen to wait. The next evening, Clara covered an exhibition at a left bank gallery, an opening for new painters whose names the fashion crowd said with careful enthusiasm. She wore sable black culottes, a bone-white poplin shirt with cufflinks like tiny constellations, and slingback heels that sounded like a metronome of certainty. On her lips, a red barely this side of scandal. The space was a symphony of white walls and low conversation. Champagne flutes chimed, cameras sighed. Clara drifted in the cool air of critique, noting silhouettes and color stories the way a conductor hears harmony. Then a canvas stopped her, an alley in Montmartre, rain-washed and luminous, as if the stones themselves remembered happiness. The brushwork carried tenderness without sentimentality. At the bottom, Julian Arnaud. "Do you like it?" a voice asked beside her. She turned. He was taller than her certainty. A gentle jawline, ink-dark curls that the gallery lights softened, eyes the steady brown of good coffee. A linen jacket, lived in, a shirt the color of almond milk, sleeves rolled to reveal a scar at the wrist shaped like a comma, a pause before something important. "The light feels honest," Clara said, surprised at her own candor. "As if it forgives." He smiled, slow and genuine. "That's kinder than I am with myself." Something odd happened then. A hush as if the room took one discreet step back. The air thickened with awareness, not dramatic, just true. The world bent. The reader's words, like a thread pulled tight, ran straight through her. "Clara Duval," she heard herself say, extending a hand. "Latelier Vogue." "Julian," he replied, taking it. His palm was warm, paint rough in a way that made her imagine mornings, honest messes, shared coffee. She pulled her mind back like a silk scarf saved from a gust. They moved through the gallery together. When she reached for a canopy at the same moment he did, their fingers grazed. A tiny electric shiver stitched her skin. She caught herself glancing at his mouth, at the dimple that appeared when he laughed about his rain-obsessed childhood sketches. "Your work has restraint," she said, notebook idle. "But the restraint lets the tenderness breathe." "People usually call it quiet," he said. "You call it breathing." Outside, the Seine kept its old promise and shimmered. He walked her to the curb where taxis inhaled and exhaled people. She felt oddly unwilling to leave the radius of his presence, like stepping out of a circle of lamplight into night. "Coffee?" he asked, eyes hopeful, uncalculated. My schedule is carnivorous, she deflected, then softened. But yes. Text me. He typed her number into his phone. As a taxi door opened, she glanced back and caught him watching her with an expression that made her stomach do something unbecomingly cinematic. The street seemed to tilt just a little in their direction. They met at a café off Rue Jacob, a pocket of morning where the barista knew everyone's sorrows and burned none of the milk. Clara arrived in a pinstripe blazer over a satin camisole, denim curved precisely at the waist, kitten heels with a gold sling, effortless on purpose. Julian wore a navy chore jacket and the contented scruff of a man who had painted past midnight. He brought her an almond croissant unasked. You look like someone who eats the marzipan first, he teased. I always save the heart for last, she corrected, and the sentence hung between them like a vow neither recognized yet. Small oddities began to accrue. He echoed phrases the tarot reader had murmured, the world bends, what you're ready to see, without knowing their origin. They reached for the same book in a bouquinist's stall, its spine stamped with two swans in flight. They bumped into each other on Pont d'Arts the next afternoon, separately invited to the same pop-up runway shoot. When they spoke, the city seemed to tune itself to their key. Coincidence, Clara told herself, but the word felt narrow. Julian showed her his studio in a courtyard off Canal Saint-Martin. Sunlight pouring through high windows, canvases leaning like sleepwalkers, turpentine turning the air devotional. A charcoal sketch pinned above the work table caught her breath. A woman mid-laugh, head turned, earrings catching light. She looked like Clara felt when she forgot to be careful. An exercise, he said, a shade shy. She teased his color palettes, how his blues knew rain in 6 dialects, and he teased her love for precise seams. He made coffee on a dented mocha pot. She took off her blazer and rolled her sleeves, revealing wrists scripted with fragrance she could never quite find in any store, her private signature of bergamot and pear. He noticed. You smell like a door opening at the right time, he murmured, and heat traveled through her like a good rumor. Later, walking back along the canal, a gust lifted her scarf. It flew like something delighted to be free. Julian caught it with a laughing reach, and when he looped it back around her neck, his fingers brushed the hollow at her throat. Her pulse made a small confession there. Thank you, she said, voice even, heart not. Any time, he replied, eyes holding hers a fraction too long for plausibility. That night, Clara placed the cafe receipt in her journal and the tarot shop's card beside it. She told herself she kept souvenirs for structure. But structure was not why she picked up the lover's card she'd taken from the shop's sample deck. She didn't remember pocketing it, and found it tucked inexplicably into her coat. The candlelight made the angel's wings seem to tremble. Coincidence, she whispered again and blew out the flame. In the dark, the outline of the card was a quiet lighthouse. Romance in Paris is a performance until, abruptly, it isn't. For 2 weeks, Clara and Julian slipped into a choreography neither could have choreographed. Coffee that turned into walks, walks that turned into dinners, dinners that lingered past the hour when the city loosens its collar and sighs. She wore liquid satin and clean lines and the occasional insolent bow. He wore shirts that remembered the touch of paint and jackets that looked better crumpled. Yet love is not made of scenes alone. It is also made of histories that lean in. Clara's certainty had been trained by disappointment. Her first real love had adored her brilliance but resented her stubborn standards. Another mistook her ambition for a cosmetic. She had learned that longing can be an emulsifier. It makes what doesn't mix seem possible until heat reveals the separation. So she kept her heart as one keeps jewelry, polished, guarded, mostly unworn. Julian, for his part, carried a quieter fracture. An engagement dissolved 2 years before, not with shouting but with a merciful silence neither could survive. His former fiancée wanted a future organized like a spreadsheet, color-coded and unmessy. Julian wanted mornings like weather, predictable only in their change. He told himself he didn't believe in soulmates. He believed in work, in showing up with his hands and hope. One evening, rain freckled the glass at La Coupole. Clara's lipstick matched her clutch, a devout red. Julian pushed a plate of frites toward the center so they could share without noticing they were sharing. They were talking about nothing dangerous when the subject tilted. Do you believe in fate? He asked, tone light, eyes not. I believe in seam allowances and bus schedules, she said. Then, because the wine had been kind and she trusted his gaze, she added, a reader turned over the lovers for me. Said I'd know him by the way the world bends. Julian's fork stilled. And, has it? Bent? The truth fluttered like a bird in her throat. She reached for practicality. Coincidences perform convincingly in Paris. He nodded, but something tender in his face dimmed a fraction, as if a small lamp had shaded itself. I was told once that love is a choice you keep making, he said. I suppose fate is only interesting if it offers a door, not a cage. They walked home along Boulevard Raspail, under awnings that shook off rain whenever a taxi exhaled. At her building he kissed her cheek with a patience that felt like courage. She closed her door and leaned against it, hand pressed flat as if listening to an old house. In her bedroom she set the lover's card upright on her dresser. The candle wick, when lit, took flame instantly, as if waiting. Across the river, Julian mixed ultramarine with a whisper of sienna until the blue felt like the taste of rain. He painted two figures crossing a street from opposite directions, the traffic light caught mid-change, the city pausing as if polite. He didn't title it. Some things are only named after they arrive. Clara returned to Rue de Rosiers on a Thursday bright enough to show every truth. She told herself she was picking up a scented oil Camille adored, but her steps were aligned toward a different door. The velvet curtain should have been there. The brass bell should have been impatient. Instead, there was a blank facade where the tarot shop had been, a shuttered window reflecting her face like a rumor. She checked the address twice. A florist next door shrugged. Pas de boutique de tarot ici, mademoiselle? Not since I opened, 2 years now. Clara's spine did an inexplicable thing, a chill like slipped lace. She walked the block 3 times, then noticed an envelope wedged in the crack where would met stone. Her name on it in looping ink. Inside, a single card, the star, and a note. The cards only show you what you're ready to see. She stood still as a mannequin in a window, except that her heart knocked. The rational world felt suddenly like a well-cut garment missing one discreet stitch. She slipped the star into her wallet as if it were an ID. That night she told Julian only the outline. They ate cacio e pepe in a tiny trattoria that believed in candles and forgiving chairs. When she described the empty storefront, he reached across the table and stilled her fidgeting fork with 2 fingers. Whether the shop exists or not, he said half smiling, I'm here. How can you be so calm? She asked, more plea than provocation. Because not everything I love can be explained, he said. My brother used to say that the best music doesn't end, it changes rooms. He didn't often mention his brother, and the softness in his voice made her throat ache. They walked out into a night rinsed clean by rain. On a side street, he pulled her gently beneath a wrought iron balcony where bougainvillea leaned like a chandelier. Clara, he said, voice careful and intent, whatever the cards say, I'm choosing this. You. He kissed her then, slow, attentive, as if reading a language he had learned to respect. She felt the world answer with one long exhale. Her hands lifted to his collar. His fingers framed her jaw, thumbs resting where breath becomes speech. This was not spectacle. It was recognition. The taste of rain. The warmth of a door opening at the right time. When they broke apart, the bougainvillea shook as if slightly scandalized. Back in her apartment, Clara placed the star beside the lovers. The 2 cards leaned against each other like friends at the end of a long table, conspiratorial and serene. She lay awake, not unsettled now but awake in the way a life becomes when it starts telling the truth out loud. Summer arrived soft-footed, and Paris, like a woman reassured, showed collarbone. Mornings in markets, afternoons on terraces, nights that ended in the kind of laughter that makes neighbors forgive you. Clara and Julian moved through it with the ease of people who had stopped auditioning. He painted her hands, then her mouth, then the way she tilted her head when considering a hem. She wrote a feature that began as a meditation on drape and became a love letter to the human body for how it persists. She wore a pistachio silk slip beneath a men's linen shirt and flats that flashed like winks. He wore a tee soft as breath and trousers that remembered kneeling. One evening, they climbed to Sacré-Cœur as the city lit itself from the outside in. Musicians tuned. Tourists pressed coins into palms. Julian took Clara's hand and she let him, and it felt less like surrender than like good tailoring, something finally sitting right. Tell me something you've never said, he murmured. She considered. I'm afraid of being misunderstood more than I'm afraid of being alone. Pause. And sometimes I dress like armor because armor looks like beauty if you cut it right. He squeezed her fingers once, a punctuation. I paint because I can't keep what I don't translate. They danced to a busker's cello, no choreography, her cheek against his shoulder, the basil and citrus smell of his skin a small mercy. When his mouth found hers, slow, reverent, as if the kiss were a door and not a destination, she rose onto her toes and gave him the kind of yes that is a decision. They did not rush what didn't want rushing. Love grew in layers, a shared grocery list, a key left in a dish, a toothbrush that remained after the weekend. On nights in his studio, she dozed on the chaise while he worked, waking to his paint-smudged kiss on her temple. On mornings in her apartment, he watched her edit sentences, admiring how her focus made time obedient. Yet the past keeps a calendar. As Clara's feature on The New Parisian Quiet Fashion That Whispers took shape, her editor pushed for a human core. "You're a painter," he prodded. "The work sings when you write him. Give me a profile inside the trend." She said no twice and then a careful yes, if she kept control. She told herself love could withstand observation. Julian agreed with a trust that felt both right and terrifying. "Tell the truth," he said. "Just don't turn me into a metaphor I can't live with." She promised, and meant it. The piece landed on a Thursday with the clatter of dishes and the buzz of phones. The quiet radical, Julian Arnaud, and the tenderness of restraint. It was beautiful, clear as glass, honest as hunger. It was also popular. The gallery called, a major collector reached out, a brand requested a collaboration that made sense on paper and nowhere else. With attention came scrutiny. An art blog found the detail about his scar and made a meal of it. A rival painter called his work calculated sincerity. A gossip account lifted a photo Clara had not meant for publication. Julian asleep, a streak of pale blue on his thumb, her scarf over his chest. She had never sent it to the magazine, but the internet is a lake with too many mouths. Julian's studio, usually sanctuary, filled with a noise not made of sound. When Clara arrived that evening in a graphite sheath dress and low heels built for apology, he stood at the window as if measuring how far a person can fall without leaving. "You said you'd keep me human," he said, "not cruel, not calm. Now I'm a story." "I kept us honest," she replied, fighting the tremor in her voice. "I wrote what I see." "What you see is mercy," he said softly. "What they see is meat." Silence expanded. She could feel the tower card somewhere near, even if she'd never pulled it from her pocket. Lightning striking stone, architecture cracking along its most necessary lines. "I can pull the piece down," she offered, even as she knew the internet doesn't unlearn. He shook his head. "No. The work will survive this. I don't know if we will." The words landed not like knives but like weather, inevitable, miserable, beyond appeal. Clara felt something seed inside her, an old reflex assembling armor at speed. "Perhaps we mistook momentum for meaning," she said, hating herself mid-sentence. He closed his eyes as if she'd switched off a light. "Don't tidy what's breaking," he whispered. She left before she could stay and ruin it further. On Pont Neuf, rain began like static. She stood under it, hair slicked to her jaw, the city blurring into a watercolor that refused to dry. She took the lovers and the star from her wallet and held them to the sky as if asking for a better weather report. A gust snatched the star and carried it toward the river. She let it go. For a moment she believed she had let everything go. At home she wrote and rewrote a message she didn't send. The dress pooled around her like a dark opinion. In the mirror she looked exquisite and desolate, the kind of woman people captioned as unbothered. The lie tasted like tin. Across the city Julian painted until color refused him. He cleaned his brushes with hands that shook, then sat on the floor and leaned his head against the studio couch where she had slept. He thought of the reader's promise and the note's warning. He wondered whether fate is only ever what two people agree to carry. 3 days passed, long as Lent. Paris went on being Paris, bakers faithful, pigeons insolent, the Seine practicing its one song. Camille brought soup and opinions. "You told the truth," she said, perching on Clara's bed in silver flats and moral clarity. "Now tell the rest of it." To him. Clara dressed with the particular deliberation of a woman who intends to be believed. White silk blouse, trousers the color of ink, low heels for standing her ground, a trench that meant business but could forgive. She took the lover's card, now soft at the corners, and slipped it into her pocket like a compass. Julian had left his studio door unlatched. She found him at the canvas from the beginning, 2 figures crossing a street, the light mid-change. He turned and the tiredness in his face made something in her chest kneel. "I wrote to survive," she said before courage could evaporate. "I wrote because it's the one way I know how to hold light. But I forgot that light without shelter can burn." He listened, jaw unclenched. She went on. "If you need a quieter life than I can give, I'll bear it. But don't let me tidy this into a lesson. I love you, Julian. Not the article. You." Truth rearranged the room. He crossed to her, stopping close enough that she could count the flecks of ochre on his sleeve. "I was a coward," he said. "I let noise tell me what we were. I forgot the rule I gave you, that love is the choice you keep making." She took his hand and placed the lover's card in it. "This isn't a prediction," she said. "It's an instruction." He turned the card over. On the back, in her looping script, she had written a simple sentence: "I choose you." He exhaled a sound that was nearly a laugh and nearly a prayer. "Then let's be worthy of what we've been given," he said. They walked to the river where Paris practices forgiveness. The Pont des Arts was silver with late light. He kissed her, not to erase the week but to bless it into history. When they parted, she pressed her forehead to his. "No more disguises," she said. "No more tidy endings," he said. "Only true ones." Months later, at his solo show, crowded, warm, mercifully human, one painting held the room. Two figures mid-crossing under a sky deciding its weather, hands almost touching, traffic paused, city attentive. The plaque read simply, "The Lovers Chosen." Clara stood beside Julian, a dress cut like a yes, the smallest star-shaped pendant at her throat. In her clutch, the star card reappeared somehow, tucked into the lining as if it had come home by itself. She laughed, the sound of a person astonished and unsurprised at once. Later they returned to the café on Rue Jacob. He ordered 2 almond croissants without asking. She broke hers, saved the marzipan heart for last and fed him the piece. The world did its polite bend. Or perhaps it didn't. Perhaps what had bent, finally, was fear. In a city famous for its spectacle, they chose something rarer. A love not against reason but beyond it, stitched with dailiness, tailored to hold. Whether written in the stars or shuffled into being, it fit. And when the candle between them flickered, it wasn't a sign. It was a simple wind, and they at last were unafraid.